Good day, everyone. Now we will proceed to the discussion of post-colonialism and its historical background. In this lesson, we will talk about the concepts on colonialism, neocolonialism, and post-colonial literary criticism. So please lend your ears as we go through the discussion. In understanding post-colonialism and its connection to literature, we must look first to its predecessor, which is the colonialism. What is colonialism? When we say colonialism, it is the control by one power over a dependent area or people. It usually happens when one nation subjugates another, conquering its population and exploiting it, while forcing its own language and cultural values upon its people. Now, the successor of post-colonialism is the neocolonialism. Neocolonialism is often associated with the word development, because neocolonialism is broadly understood as a further development of capitalism. A foreign power indirectly controls or influences a territory and its people, usually through financial means. Now, let us look into the historical background of post-colonialism. In 1950s, Alfred Sauvy coined the term Third World to refer to developing nations, such as those in Africa or South America. Actually, Third World countries differ from First World countries, those in most of Europe and North America, which are characterized by industrialization, democracy, relative affluence, and similar cultural assumptions and beliefs. And many members of the First World have historically been the oppressors. They too are involved in the discussion, and this has been the start of interest in post-colonialism. Let's talk more about colonialism. Colonialism is the subjection of one population to another. It is most clearly seen in physical conquest, but it also involves political, economic, and cultural domination. When people are colonized, their traditions and practices are supplanted by imitations of those of the colonizer. Of course, parts of their indigenous culture, as elemental as food, clothing, and recreation, tend to disappear because they are either hidden or replaced, then removing that culture from history. Now, let's proceed to post-colonialism. In 1960s, theories surrounding post-colonial concerns have been published. Post-colonialism is concerned with what happens to a culture from the beginning of colonization to the present. The reason why the members of the fields political science, sociology, and psychology are interested in post-colonialism theories is because the formal termination of colonial rule does not wipe out its legacy, and the culture that is left is a mixture of the colonized one and that of the colonizer. That's why it is marked by blended practice. Let's talk about this book by Edward Said. This book is Orientalism. It was published in 1978 and has an important influence on post-colonialism. In his analysis, he called attention to the pejorative stereotypes that the British, other Europeans, and Americans create of the peoples unlike themselves. These Eastern nations are given all the negative characteristics that the West does not want to see in itself. Well, the West views themselves as good, upright, and moral, while those who are unlike them are lazy, deceitful, and irrational. Do you remember the reports of the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995? They attributed the deed to Middle Eastern terrorists because it was impossible to think that an American would have done such a thing. In post-colonialism, the post-colonial theorist examines subjects as language, feminism, oppression, cultural identity, race, and education. And the intent is to study what happens when one culture is dominated by another. According to Helen Gilbert and Joanne Tompkins, post-colonialism is a complex mixture of contesting discourses, social hierarchies, and power structures. Now, if we're going to talk about post-colonial literary criticism, we are looking at the works of post-colonial writers, but you have to remember that it's not limited to them. Its practitioners are interested in how the colonized came to accept the values of the more powerful culture and to resist them. It also analyzes literature produced by cultures that develop in response to colonial domination, from the first point of colonial contact to the present. Well, the broadest view of post-colonial literature is that it is the literature written in English by people in formerly colonized countries, some of it authored by the colonizers and their descendants, but more of it by those they colonized. Today, it seems that the post part of post-colonialism may be an overstatement of the way things really are. Weaker powers are no longer as likely to be taken by military conquest, but they are no less economically and culturally dominated. Major international corporations, drawn by the availability of cheap labor and cooperative local governments, practice what is known as neocolonialism, which has much the same effect as traditional imperialism. Under neocolonialism's aegis, the customs and traditional ways of the subjugated peoples are weakened, changed, and sometimes destroyed. So, a new kind of colonialism is really taking place. Thank you guys for listening, and good luck to your quiz.